Skip messed up bad. You see, in the Aryan Brotherhood of Mississippi, when a captain hands you $600 worth of crystal, you take it and you pay up. But Michael Skip Hudson thought he could play it different, said the dope wasn't good enough and refused to hand over the money. And in a gang as structured as the ABM, disrespect gets handled quickly. The call came down from leadership. They'd settle it with minutes. That meant a fistfight, a simple, brutal way to set things straight, but Hudson made the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't show up. Frankie, state-raised Owens Jr. wasn't about to let that slide. A Brotherhood soldier ignoring a direct order, that wasn't just a problem, it was a challenge to the whole system. So Owens and 3 others waited at a trailer near the Alabama border, knowing Hudson would come through eventually. And he did, on a cold December day in 2010, rolling up in a pickup truck with a gang soldier and a new recruit. They told him they were going to cook meth, tricking him into coming. But that night wasn't about business. That night was about sending a message. Later, panic set in. Parker, one of the men involved, realized things had gone too far. He called Joseph Brandon Oak Creel, the ABM's top leader, looking for a way out of the mess. Hudson wasn't just beaten, he was dead. And now they had to deal with the body. Creel made sure that problem disappeared. After Hudson's murder, Owens leveled up, earning a spot at the very top as a wheel member. And from that moment on, he had his hands in everything the ABM did. But that one killing became the crack that shattered everything. Hudson's brutal murder and how they buried him became the heart of a massive federal case. Over the next couple of years, 42 members and associates of the Aryan Brotherhood of Mississippi got locked up, tearing the gang apart. And Mississippi wasn't the only place feeling the heat. Federal cases in Texas and Oklahoma proved the same thing. These local Aryan Brotherhood crews weren't just moving meth at insane levels, they were running their world through violence, inside and outside prison, enforcing a code of loyalty with fists, knives, and bullets. But that same brutal discipline is what led to their downfall. The constant rules, the beatdowns, the punishments, it all pushed too many members too far. And in the end, a bunch of them broke the ultimate rule. They turned on their own brothers. But before it all came crashing down, ABM had built something eerily efficient. The ABM gang started in Mississippi prisons back in the mid-1980s, but it didn't stay locked up for long. It spread, slipping into small towns and suburbs across the state, reaching beyond the prison walls. Like a lot of white prison gangs, ABM took its blueprint from the Aryan Brotherhood, which first popped up in a California prison in 1964. That gang formed as a way to protect white inmates from the black guerrilla family, but it didn't take long before protection turned into power, and power turned into crime. ABM followed that same path. But this wasn't just chaos, it was structured. Mississippi was divided into 3 sections, North, Central, and South, each with its leadership. The gang called itself a family, but this wasn't the kind you sit around the dinner table with. At the top, there was the Wheel, a 3-man leadership team running the show. They called those 3 spokes, and each one controlled a region. Orders flowed down from them, reaching every level of the gang. They made sure everyone stayed in line, and when someone stepped out, punishment came quick. Beatings, forced tattoo removals, burning, cutting, or covering them up, and sometimes straight up murder. If a lower-ranking member was told to take someone out, there were no second chances. You either did it or you became the next target. Joseph Brandon Creel was in one of those leadership spots when everything went down in December 2010. ABMs had state captains keeping track of members across Mississippi, making sure everyone was in touch, checking for problems with rival gangs, and collecting dues. Each of the 3 regions had its own captain, and every prison with ABM members had a facility captain. Beneath them, there were lieutenants giving orders, sergeants at arms enforcing discipline, treasurers managing money, and the rank and file soldiers carrying out the work. Membership wasn't just handed out. You needed a sponsor, someone to vouch for you. Then came the trial period. If you made it through, you had to take an oath. Loyalty for life, no exceptions. Monthly dues went to the gang's treasury, and members had to attend church meetings where business got handled, punishments got dealt, and loyalty got tested. ABM had its own identity and its symbols. Their colors, purple, gold, black, red, and blue, set them apart. They had a signature 5-step handshake and a logo that twisted the letters A and B so much it almost looked like a P or an R. The number 13 was big for them, a nod to Mississippi. though other numbers showed up too. And like most white supremacist prison gangs, they embraced Nazi imagery, swastikas, iron crosses. But the real mark of status? The SS lightning bolts. Earning them meant completing 3 violent missions. If you saw a guy with those tattoos, you knew exactly what he was about. They even had a written constitution, a 26-page rule book laying out their laws, their beliefs, and how things were run. And one thing was clear, loyalty was everything. An Aryan brother was expected to show and demand respect, live by the moral principles of the so-called elite white race. Once you were in for life. You either died serving the Brotherhood with honor or you died in disgrace. And that disgrace might just be what got you killed. The gang's beliefs were spelled out in black and white. We are the chosen few of our race, here to protect our purity and power in these changing times. They tied themselves to the Ku Klux Klan, pushing the idea that white people were superior. Are Africans, Jews, or Asians equal to pure white people? No. But law enforcement knew the truth. Not everyone in the gang really bought into the ideology. Some were true believers, sure, but others just played the part for protection and money. And money was what fueled it all. Meth was ABM's business that kept everything running. Inside prison, out on the streets, they were moving product and stacking cash. To keep the money flowing behind bars, they used Western Union, MoneyGram, and Green Dot prepaid cards. Someone on the outside would load up a card, and that cash covered everything. Bail, bills for members on the outside, debts with rival gangs, even loans for their people. ABM wasn't just trying to make money. They wanted to level up. They had their sights set on linking up with the National Aryan Brotherhood, hoping to expand their meth operation and launder their cash through bigger deals. The partnership never happened, but they had already planned to funnel 10 to 25% of their drug profits into ABM's funds if it had. And that leads us to the murder of Michael "Skip" Hudson. Back in 2010, Parker had South Mississippi on lock for ABM. He wasn't just part of the gang, he was running things, moving meth, and raking in cash. He even earned the title of Thunder Warrior, making him Brandon Creel's right-hand man. Parker stayed busy, always flipping meth and keeping the money flowing. His girlfriend, Jo Callan Henderson, saw it all firsthand. She knew exactly how he operated, selling a few ounces here, a couple more there, making sure ABM members stayed supplied. Owens, another heavy hitter in the ABM, had rank 2. By 2010, he was an area captain, the guy people called when problems needed handling. And Parker, that was his boy. Both of them wore the Thunder Warrior title like a badge, always moving together. That same year, the streets almost caught up to them. A cop in West Memphis, Arkansas, pulled them over, Parker behind the wheel, Owens riding shotgun. When the officer pressed them on why they were in town, they played it cool, saying they were just there to buy pseudoephedrine at Walmart to take back to Mississippi and sell. Somehow, they caught a break and were let go, but that heat was a warning. By the end of the year, though, Parker had bigger problems. His product was slipping. Walter Burris, another ABM member, bought some meth from one of Parker's guys, only to find out it was cut with garbage. Burris wasn't having it. He wanted his money back, or some clean meth. Parker had no choice but to fix it, swapping out the bad batch for something better. Around the same time, Parker fronted Michael "Skip" Hudson $600 worth of meth, expecting to get paid back. But Hudson never came through. That debt wasn't something to take lightly, and it got brought up at an ABM church meeting in Gulfport, Mississippi. The room was full of ABM names: Owens, Creel, Mitchell Valentine, Sonny Maxwell, Thomas Burris, James Dean, all there to settle business. Owens, being the area captain, made sure everyone knew Hudson owed Parker money. A few days later, another meeting went down. This time it was Owens, Hudson, Valentine, Burris, and Parker. Parker joining in by speakerphone. Owens made it clear Hudson had a debt and it was time to pay up. But instead of settling, Hudson and Parker started arguing over the quality of the meth. Parker gave him a deadline, 2 weeks to come up with half the money. But when that deadline passed and Hudson still hadn't paid, he was marked as breaking the rules. Brandon Creel, seeing how things were unfolding, decided this was personal between Parker and Hudson and the ABM shouldn't get involved too deep. But that didn't mean Hudson was off the hook. Creel ordered a fight, standard procedure when one ABM member owed another. But Owens gave Hudson 2 choices: take 13 punches to the chest while saluting. If he dropped the salute, everyone in the group would jump him. or take 2 minutes with two brothers, meaning he'd have to fight two ABM members back to back for 2 straight minutes. However, what started as a one-on-one between Parker and Hudson spiraled into a full-on violation. In late 2010, James Dean had one simple job: pick up Hudson at a gas station and bring him to the crew for a smash-on-sight violation. Hudson said he'd be there in 10 minutes. 10 minutes passed. No Hudson. Dean waited, called again, still nothing. Frustrated, he reached out to Owens, let him know Hudson was a no-show, and then took off. Owens was pissed. Not just because Hudson bailed, but because as a captain, his word was law. And when someone disregarded that, there were consequences. He had every right to dish out a violation of an order punishment. Meanwhile, Dean and Maxwell, who was trying to get into the ABM and had been recruited by Dean, rolled up to a Walgreens in Slidell, Louisiana, looking for supplies to cook meth. That's when Dean spotted Hudson. He pulled him aside and let him know that the ABM guys were plotting to take him out. But for whatever reason, Dean kept that info to himself when it came to Owens. A month went by and Owens had had enough. He put the word out Hudson was getting kidnapped and beaten. He even told Dean he was going to gift wrap Hudson and hand him over to Parker. No more warnings. Burris picked up Owens and Mitchell Valentine, then drove them straight to Walter Eaves's place in Mississippi, just like Owens ordered. In the car, Owens made it clear what was about to go down. Hudson wasn't going home that night. Owens had even brought wire to tie him up. When they got there, he cut the wire down to 5 feet and told Burris to park the car right by the back door of the trailer, close to the bedroom. Then Owens called Dean. He asked him straight up, did he want to be a Thunder Warrior in ABM? All he had to do was stab Hudson. But Dean wasn't built for that. He refused. As far as he knew, the plan was just to rough Hudson up, not kill him. But now, this was a death sentence. And since Dean wouldn't do the stabbing, Owens made sure he was the one who had to bring Hudson in. Dean and Maxwell went out and got Hudson, playing him with a simple lie. Help cook meth at Eve's trailer. Hudson bought it, got in Maxwell's truck, and they drove him right into the trap just like Owens planned. As they neared Eve's place, Dean called Owens, letting him know they were pulling up with Hudson. Owens was waiting. Eves opened the door and led them straight to the back bedroom. Bare room, just a box spring and mattress leaning against the wall. Then the real players stepped in. Eves, Valentine, Owens, Maxwell, and Burris. They didn't waste time. They started beating Hudson right there. Dean, he stayed out. He didn't want to see a man get killed. Maxwell was hungry for his ABM ink, and he knew what that meant, getting his hands dirty. Owens, he set the tone. First hit right to Hudson's forehead with a billy club he called Blackie. Blood poured. Hudson screamed. Owens didn't hesitate, cracking him again, this time on the back of the head. More blood. Hudson dropped. Then came the wire, feet tied together, hands wrenched behind his back, hog-tied. Owens turned to Burris. Open the trunk. Burris and Dean moved fast, grabbing a plastic sheet, maybe a tarp, maybe a tent, and laid it out inside. Then just like that, Hudson was tossed in, the trunk slamming shut behind him. Burris, Valentine, and Owens got in and drove, 100-mile ride to Parker's house in Petal, Mississippi. Dean and Maxwell followed for a bit in Maxwell's truck, but eventually they veered off. Later, Dean tattooed the ABM symbol on Maxwell on Owens' orders. After Hudson got snatched up and worked over, Owens figured it was time to finish what they called a violation. That's why he loaded Hudson up and took him to Parker's spot out in Petal, Mississippi. See, Hudson owed Parker some money, and Owens wasn't about to let that slide. He called Parker up, told him he had a gift for him, and hit the road. On the way there, Valentine brought up the billy club, saying he could have ended Hudson right then and there. Owens just shrugged it off, saying Hudson should be grateful he didn't, but that didn't mean Hudson was off the hook. From inside the trunk, Hudson and Owens kept going back and forth. Owens made it real clear he was going to catch up to him no matter what. Now Hudson had to deal with Parker, and there was no way out of that. When Hudson wouldn't shut up, Owens told him to keep talking and see if they wouldn't pull over and poke a hole in his lung. When they finally got to Parker's place, Burris, Valentine, and Owens dragged Hudson out of the trunk. He was barely holding on, but still had enough life in him to take a drag off Valentine's cigarette. 5 minutes later, Parker showed up. That's when Owens turned to Valentine and Burris and told them to head out. They didn't ask questions, they just left. Before they did, though, they took the plastic from the trunk and cleaned it down with Windex. Inside Parker's camping trailer, things got real. Only Owens and Parker know exactly what went down. But word eventually got out, and we'll get to that later in this video. His voice was shaky when he called Creel, saying he needed help, that Creel was the only one he could trust. When Creel showed up, Parker was a mess, pacing back and forth. But Owens, he was pale maybe, but calm. Creel didn't ask too many questions. He just got to work. They rolled Hudson's body up in a carpet, stuffed it inside a big 50-gallon drum, and hauled it over to Creel's place. Creel fired up his backhoe, dug a hole, lined it with metal roofing, and dropped the drum in. Then he tossed in some tires, doused everything in gasoline, and lit it up. That fire burned for 5 straight days. When it was done, he folded up the metal roofing, scooped up what was left, and dumped his makeshift crematorium into a nearby creek. The next morning, Valentine called Parker, but Parker just told him he and Owens were finishing something up, following Creel's car. Later that day, Owens called Valentine and told him to come pick him up from Parker's trailer. When Valentine got there, that trailer smelled way too clean. On the way back, Owens leaned back in his seat, real satisfied, and told Valentine they wouldn't have to worry about Hudson anymore, said he'd never be found. A few days later, Owens pulled everyone in for a little meeting at Valentine's trailer. Burris, Maxwell, Dean, and Valentine were all there. Owens laid it out plain. Hudson wasn't coming back. They didn't have to deal with him anymore. And from that moment on, no one was to speak on it again. Weeks passed. Then came another ABM church meeting at Thomas Parker's trailer. He was the state captain at the time. That night, all the ones who played a part in what happened to Hudson got called to the back. Thomas Parker, Owens, Dean, Burris, Valentine, Eves, and Creel. That's when Owens finally came clean. He told Thomas that he and Parker were in it together. And to make sure Parker was just as tied in, Owens made him stab Hudson himself. It all came down to money. Hudson, an ABM member, owed Parker for drugs. But Parker was in debt to Creel, and Creel wasn't the kind of guy who waited around for his cut. The pressure was coming from all sides. Owens let them know the sheriff's department had already been sniffing around about the kidnapping, but he'd handled it. Then he made sure everybody understood. This conversation never happened. No one was to say a word about Hudson again. Creel took it a step further. He kicked every last one of them out of ABM and told them to disappear. Parker started having nightmares, not just bad dreams, real sweat-drenched, heart-pounding nightmares. One night, he woke up screaming, his body shaking, mumbling something about killing a man. He couldn't hold it in anymore. So he told his girlfriend, Jo Kaylin Henderson, told her straight up, he strangled Hudson with a bat, crushed him so bad blood poured from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. Said Hudson was already half dead when they dragged him to his trailer. And if he hadn't helped finish the job, Owens would have taken him out instead. Then he made sure she understood. If she ever told anybody, ABM would come for her and her family. Owens, he kept climbing, promoted from captain to spoke, then transferred from southern to northern Mississippi. Even behind bars, his rank kept rising. Meanwhile, Parker started pulling away. He wasn't deep in ABM like before, but that ink on his skin, that ABM tattoo, that wasn't going anywhere. But ABM got sloppy. Too many people knew too much. Then the feds came knocking. Wiretaps, evidence, proof of a massive meth operation running across the state. 17 people got scooped up, leaders, foot soldiers, even the women, the so-called Featherwoods, who handled the dirty work, smuggling contraband, laundering money, moving dope. And when the heat came down, a lot of them didn't think twice before talking. Burris, Valentine, Maxwell, Dean, all of them flipped. Parker went down first, arrested on November 19th, 2011 in Forest County, charged with Hudson's murder. Owens, though, was already sitting in jail when it all came crashing down. Then there was Joseph Brandon Creel. He got picked up in May 2012, charged with intimidating a witness and being an accessory after the fact. At trial, the government laid it all out. ABM ordered the hit. Hudson's murder wasn't random. It was about power, keeping their own in check, making sure loyalty wasn't a question. And Parker and Owens, they did what they did to hold their spots in the gang, maybe even move up. The jury didn't waste any time. Parker and Owens were found guilty. Murder, running a criminal operation, the whole deal. Parker also caught a meth charge, while Owens got life plus another 10 years for attempted murder. 2.5 years of investigating, digging, flipping people against each other, and it all led to this. When it was over, 42 ABM members and associates were found guilty. And just like that, their shot at joining the National Aryan Brotherhood was dead. They had big plans turning ABM into something like a local franchise of a national empire. They'd already been pushing meth from out-of-state suppliers, but getting in with the California Aryan Brotherhood, that would have changed everything. Better connections, better supply, more influence inside and outside prison. They were even drafting a new rule book, telling members to get the national tattoo. Then the feds shut it all down. Kelly Pearson, the prosecutor from the DOJ's organized crime unit, put it plain and simple. These guys weren't just criminals, they were connected. They knew each other, talked to each other, and moved as one. And that made them dangerous. That's why they had to be stopped. What are your thoughts on this story? Appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.